Hi guys, welcome to another series of the BPN In Conversations with. Now this year, our theme is Dare to Dream. Now during this series, you're going to be hearing from some very remarkable Black and ethnic minority leaders from various industries who have dared to go after their professional dreams. Now, as you know, our vision here at the BPN is to inspire all Black professionals to advance in their careers and to reach their full potential. So our intention with these conversations is to inspire you to do just that. Now, without further ado, I'm going to welcome our guest speaker for today. Well, say hello to Levi Roots. Hi, Levi.
Respect, Kiki. Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to say Rastafari blessings to yourself and to everyone who's listening to this.
Thank you. Thank you, Levi. Thank you for being here. You were actually the first guest speaker to say yes to coming on here today. So thank you. We appreciate it. Okay, so Levi, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about what you do? And I know there's many of them, and how you got into it. So choose whichever one you want to tell us about. Just inspire us.
I think most people will know of my Dragons Den exploits.
Yes.
I think, but my favorite part of my life is talking about my family, about my grandma, and about how I became to be the Levi Roots that a lot of people know, because you always know the after effect. But I think the greatest part of any story is the beginning, because without the beginning, there can never be an end.
That's right.
I'd love to touch on the fact that how my grandma played a massive, and my mom played these two beautiful women played a massive part in my life growing up as a kid. Growing up as the youngest in the family, and being one of the sort of last ones to come over to the UK, and managed to form a brilliant relationship with my grandma, who perhaps knew that once all the kids that was left behind, because in the times of Windrush, the grandma was the one that took care of all the children while the parents went to this new world of England to work hard, buy houses, and then send for the family one at a time. So they couldn't take the kids with them in that first voyage. So the grandmas become really important in Caribbean family life, because they were the one that was in charge of the kids. And my grandma, her name was Miriam, and she was in charge of the children, and me being the youngest. I mean, I didn't know what was going on as a 9-year-old boy then, that every year one of my brothers and sisters would leave. And so, but my grandma, she knew that, and she knew that I was going to be the last one. So I think she went about to educate me in the things that she was good at. And that was mainly about food and about cooking and about music. This was her. She did a duet with my grandfather in the Baptist church in Clarendon in Jamaica. So she was a really good singer with a really good voice. And I think I picked up my musical exploits from her. But it was the food that she went about to teach me as the youngest in the family. And she knew that I was going to be the last one with her that spent the longest time with her. So she went about in just teaching me everything she knew about making a relish, which was a fantastic thing which she had in the family. A relish was something that she could, because we couldn't afford to buy meats and stuff to make proper gravy and to have proper flavors. So my grandma was great at making these relishes out of nothing, because we would have the yams and the potatoes and everything that we grow, in Caribbean. Every plant is edible in the Caribbean. So that was really easy for us to feed ourselves. But one thing we didn't have was just the chickens and the meats and the beefs and all that to make the flavors of that kind of stuff. But she was just brilliant at just using herbs and spices and everything just to make this gravy. And when you pour just the gravy on your dumpling and your yams and your potatoes, and no meat or whatsoever, but just this relish, just this gravy that she would make on there, you'd be feeling like you're having like a 3-course meals with your steak and your beef, and she was just amazing. And it was that concept of making something out of nothing, that I took to create reggae sauce for many years. But it was the love of my grandma and my mom, that made me into the Levi Roots who I am today. So I love them to bits. These two beautiful women are perhaps my greatest inspiration of all time.
That story just warmed my heart so much. Thank you for sharing that. I can't imagine what that must have been like, creating something from nothing and just to be nurtured into that as a little boy, and just you grew into it. What an inspiration. And you continue to inspire us in the same way, continue to creating things out of nothing. I love that. Thank you for
Well,
sharing that story.
absolutely. No problem at all. And I just like to add that, it's that bit about families, which is the most important to me as a Caribbean child. Because I know that when the Windrush left the Caribbean and came to the UK, that family, that nucleus of the beautiful family that lives in the yard, that the whole community took care of. We missed that when we came to the UK because the community wasn't looking after the children anymore. You had to do that yourself as a family. And it was a great thing back in Jamaica that, that saying that it's not one person that brings up a child, it's a village.
Yes.
And that's the aspect that I came from, So I'm still saying in the UK, we're going to keep that family nucleus really strong. We've missed some of that strongness because of the way that we are here. In foreign, as we call it. But, I just want to encourage everybody to keep that family, that family unit intact, just as how I try to keep my grandmother's story.
I love that. I love that. That's beautiful. Thank you for that. Now, I imagine along the way of creating all the wonderful things that you have created, the source, the music, businesses, what strategies have you used to deal with any barriers or challenges that you have come across in trying to achieve the end goal of what you were trying to achieve?
Yeah, I think I've used the word resilient a lot over the past few years, and I think it really resonates with how, pertaining to your question is how did I manage to do,
That's right.
Fantastic feats I've managed to. I think that resilient and not being afraid to make mistakes, because that's something else as well. You go down a path and you never use your mistakes, as a positive thing. And that's what I did. Every time I fell flat on my face, I learned that, well, I'm not going to do that again. So I was never afraid to shake myself in any other way and try new things. And I think when the time came around when I eventually wanted to move away from the music and going into the food with my grandmother's sauce, that was something else that was very daunting because nobody knew me as a chef. Nobody knew me as a cook or a sauce man or anything. I think most people, even in Bristol and St. Paul's, they knew me as a music man because I've been coming there from the 70s with my sound system. So anybody that knew anything of a Levi Roots always knew me as a sound man or as a singer or a DJ or whatever it is, but to do with music. And then all of a sudden here, this man, was just used to having a microphone in his hand, was now having a mortar and a pestle to grind sauce together. And it actually never worked in the first instance. I did get a lot of knockback from especially people of my local area of Brixton that was saying to me that we love you for your music and we love you for your sound system, but please don't try and sell us a sauce because we can make this ourselves.
No.
Because it was a Caribbean area. Brixton predominantly was the first real Caribbean area of the UK that people came and resided, and it was seen as a Jamaican type of area. So I think people were saying to me, we make our own, Levi. We love you for your music. Sell us that, but don't sell us your sauces. And I actually used that as a positive because I knew then what they were saying to me, that this wasn't my market. It wasn't saying to me that my sauce was rubbish, but they were saying to me that this is not your market. And I took that as a positive, that I had to, instead of using it as a weight on my shoulder and think, oh, my people is rejecting me. But I just thought that I've got to go out there and find my market, and that's what I did. I knew that my sauce here wasn't an authentically Caribbean sauce because I moderated it to suit the British palate. So I had to go out there and find my mainstream market to be able to become a success. So in some ways, I used the knockback from my own people, my locals, to make myself resilient against, negative stuff. I'd use that as a feedback to find my market. So now whenever time I make mistakes, I don't see it as mistakes, I see it as feedback. It's valuable feedback. And that's how I've managed to be where I am today by, taking away all negative things and turning them into something positive.
Still in the process of creating things out of something, nothing. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
What I heard you say there when you said, people were saying, we don't want Levi, the microphone guy. We don't want the sauce guy. We want just be the music guy.
Yeah.
It's like this identity that you had to stick to, or people were trying to tell you to stick to. And that's something I can so relate to. And you went, No, give me a second. There is something here that I want to do, and you use that as feedback. That is just so inspiring. Thank you for that. Now, I imagine along the way, there were times when, like you said, you fell flat on your face. What drove you to just keep going, picking yourself up in those flat on your face moments?
Well, when I got the rejection about the Caribbean sauce, that I found my market, I went into a state of mind that I didn't want to go anywhere with my sauce that didn't have Shire at the end of the name of the word of the UK, because my first method I went to was a place called Carmarthenshire. And when I got to the Shires, I realized that no Black people looking like me are not in the Shires. And everything Shire at the name of the end of the word in the UK is these lovely country villages and fates, and in North Yorkshire, in Stilton, up in Stilton, and these lovely, fantastic British names in these villages. And I found that they keep these lovely farmers markets in these Shire places, like regularly in monthly. So I got rejected from local, and I thought that, you know what? Anywhere that has Shire at the end of it, that's where I'm going to go with my sauce, because I felt that's where my market was. It wasn't someone looking like myself was my market. My market was mainstream white people. That's who I wanted to sell Caribbean sauce to.
Wow.
Because back then, there was no Caribbean flavor that was mainstream. You didn't see a sauce in a shop that was, if you were outside of a Caribbean area and you went into a Sainsbury's or a Tesco's, you would have never seen something like a Caribbean jerk sauce that was representative of what the Caribbean is, that's been sold to mainstream. So when I found my market in the Shires, they loved the fact that I was a Rasta man. They loved that I had a guitar. They loved the stories of my grandma and of Jamaica. And I'm telling them about the Talawa, that we lived about the Talawa and out of many one people. And I'm drawing down all my heritage easily, which I didn't do when I was in my local, because everybody knew about Talawa. They knew about the Jamaican anthem and Marcus Garvey and everything that I could throw into my stories of my source of being a Caribbean, taking this to new. And they absolutely lapped it up in the Shires, and for years, for about 2.5 years, I just went to these places with my sauce. And it was while I was at one of these events that I was spotted by a producer of Dragon's Den, which I'd never seen the show. I'd never heard of Dragon's Den. So if I was never in this place, you know what they say about surround yourself with like-minded people. If I hadn't surrounded myself with this like-minded mainstream people that I wanted to buy into my Caribbean concept, I would have never, had the opportunity to spot Dragon's Den, because as I says, I never approached it. I never heard of it. And this lady came across and she says, would you like to, Levi, you're fantastic. We love the sauce. We love the song. Would you like to be on this show? And for me, it was that moment of refusing her because I didn't know what the show was. So I would say, excuse me, I'm not interested because, but when she said it was called Dragon's Den, that's when it resonated with me, because I think if you was to tell any Rastaman that there is some dragons over there need to be slain, and the Rastaman will tell you, show me those dragons.
I love it.
So what you said is, I just thought the concept of me with my music to become this dragon slayer was just something that I really wanted to do. So I accepted a business card. And of course, when I went home with the business card and everyone that I told that I'd been approached by this Dragon's Den, the instant response I got back was like, Levi, please don't take that guitar on the show. No. Don't sing. Because nobody had ever sang on Dragon's Den. It was a complete left field if you're going to do that. And you're going to be slain if you did that. But, Kiki, I thought to myself, I want to be me.
Yes.
I want to be myself. It's easier when you're you. It's more difficult when you're pretending to be someone else.
100%.
Absolutely. If you don't, as a kid, if you don't have your comfort blanket, you're not going to fall asleep. And my guitar was my comfort, and I just thought that, everyone's telling me don't take the music. Nobody had ever sang on this show. But I'm going to be the first to do something, to be me, to be the person who I am. And I'm so glad, because I'm rubbish when I'm not me. And as you can see at Dragon's Den, the first part when I was singing and I was in my own comfort zone, singing my song, and my grandma was inspiring me and everything. That part was brilliant. But it was the other parts that I didn't prepare for, that you saw that I nearly fell flat in my face. But I'd already sold it to the Dragons before that. They brought into the Levi Roots before the numbers and the sweating and everything else that went on. And that's the resilience, as I said, is going with your art, believing within yourself that you are good enough. And especially in this month of Black History Month, that is really something that I want to get across to my people, is to say that you are good enough. Doesn't matter where you come from, doesn't matter what your background is. Business doesn't belong to anybody. Anybody can become an entrepreneur, but you need to have that resilience because it is about long-term thinking. It's not about short-term.
Oh, do you know what, Levi? You've given me so much, that you've given us so much. I feel like this is just me and you chatting away. Meanwhile, lots of people are going to watch this. I just want to pick up on some things you were just saying, and I'm deviating from the line of questioning now. And I'm so glad you don't have the questions because I'm just going to deviate. Right. What was your thought process when you decided, right, I'm going to go to the Shires. I'm going to bring this source that white people don't know. What was your thought process in thinking, I want to enter this market where people don't know anything about this source or my heritage or what it is? What were you thinking when you decided to do that?
I think the caveat that allowed me to do that was that rejection, as I said before, because when you get rejected, especially by your own,
yes,
it can be really deep. It can be, as I said, because for me, it wasn't deep enough that I decided to put down the sauce and pick back up the guitar. It wasn't that deep. Because I believed in the sauce and I believed in my grandmother's stories and everything, that I put together, not just the sauce in the bottle. I crammed everything Jamaican in the bottle. When you look at the sauce, you see the colors of Rastafari. It's got green, gold, and red on it. It's called reggae sauce. It's got a dancing Rastaman on the front of it. When you look at the back of it, it's tell the story of my grand. So this was something that I wasn't saying that I wanted to sell a sauce. I wanted to sell my Jamaicanism, all that into the bottle. And when Caribbean people were saying that, my local, excuse me, that they make their own and, they thought that I should sell them the music. For me, it was just a way I had to find how I can express this thing that I'm so inspired by. It wasn't a rejection for me to pick the guitar up again. But what I did do is take note of that love for the music by saying that I didn't want to completely put the guitar down. But what I did was now, because I was scared of that, I love the music too much. So what I did was merge them together. My two passions, one hand was the food, which I've always cooked and that came from my grandma. And then the musician, which I'd become over the years through sound systems, was so inspiring for me. So now, because of these two inspirational things, I decided to put them together instead of, taking one and leaving the other. Put them together. I wrote the reggae sauce song. And the first time I sang that song, and I felt the vibe of it. I knew that now that this was something that I had to find the people that will enjoy this. You're not given a God-blessed situation where that everything is available to you. None of we are lucky to have that. You have to cipher out what is good for you. And that's why God made it that way, that, that ciphering and that hard work to get to where you are, you learn along the way. And by the time I got into the Shires, I now know, what was expected of me. This is not just going to be a Caribbean sauce that's sold to Jamaican or Caribbean people. This is a mainstream sauce that's going to educate mainstream about what it is to be Caribbean from a food perspective.
Wow. So it really was about educating and about telling your story, all of it, not one without the other, all of it, telling it Absolutely. With this product. Wow. I had goosebumps as you were talking about that. Thank you that was just awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Okay. So I want to now ask you, because you've talked about your grandmother, and one of the questions we have on here is, if you were to summarize your life and highlight 3 key influences, whether it's people or situations that have shaped the person that you are today, what would you say?
Well, my grandma, I'll use her as a one because I could never take her out of the equation.
Of course.
and the next one is a really funny one. It was the morning when I was on my way when I knew I was going to Dragons Den the next morning. I'd look through all my, we'd spend everything that we could to get the sauce, the labels and everything to go on the show the week before. Absolutely emptied out everything that I had as a family. No money at all. So I recognized the next day when I'm going to the den, I had to take a taxi because I couldn't take the bus, because I had my guitar with me, I had the sauces and everything. And I was traveling from Brixton to London Bridge, which is about 4 miles to get to. So the night before, I was thinking, how the hell am I going to pay for this taxi? And I rang up the taxi rank and they told me that the fare was like 20 odd pounds or whatever. It wasn't, 3 or 4 pounds that I did find in the coin boxes that we had as a family. And then my kids was looking through and we found about 7 pounds and it wasn't enough. So I thought, oh, hang on, I gotta go and see my mom to try and borrow 20 pounds from her to get to the most important destination of my life the next day. So I went around to see my mom. I, got in the house and she, as moms do, she took one look at my face and she knew that I was up for something. She knew I was coming to ask for something. So when she took one look at me and just as I was opening my mouth to say, Mom, I'm going to this Dragon's Den, she said, go and pick up your Bible. Go and pick up the Bible. So I'm saying, Mom, I need to talk to you about something. You're telling me to pick up the Bible. She said, pick up the Bible. And I picked up the Bible. She says, open it at Psalm 23. Oh. And I'm opening it at Psalm 23. And she said, I'm saying, Mom, I need to talk to you about this thing. I'm going tomorrow to do the most important thing of my. She says, shut up your mouth and read the Bible. So anyway, I'm opening the book and I'm reading this. I started to read Psalm 23, and I'm sure, your listeners will know what Psalm 23 is. I'm reading, I'm saying, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And as soon as I got to that part, she stopped me. She said, stick a pin there. She says, if you go to this Dragon's Den tomorrow, you will come back as a dragon slayer, but you have to be you. She was the one that coined that phrase. She says, if you go to your maker, just like the psalmist says, you shall not want. Yeah? She said, you go to your maker, your creator, like what you said, and you pray. What she's saying to me, I should go home and I should pray and I will never be wanting again. Mm-hmm. And while she was telling me that, Kiki, I was so inspired by these words that when I finished reading the psalm and my mom gave me the blessing, I left up that house that night and not remembering to ask for the 20 quid. Because I was so full with the Dragon Slayer. Again, as a Rasta man, and again, Rastas will know these, we latch onto these words, these lyrical moments as Rastas. And when somebody says, you will come back as a Dragon Slayer, if you go to your maker, and you ask him that you don't want to be wanted anymore. That's really crucial. So the morning I woke up, I still never had the money to pay the taxi fare, but I was full with joy. Mm-hmm. I still called the taxi, and I took the taxi to Dragon's Den without no money because I believed that something was going to happen. And when I got there, I spoke to the taxi driver, and I told him of my journey, where I'm coming from. I know I cannot pay him, but I'm going through that door. And I feel so inspired that when I come out of that door, I'm coming out as a Dragon Slayer. And the taxi man didn't even believe me. He says, okay, go what you go. But he didn't really believe that was his thing. And Kiki, I went through that door of that building that morning. And when I left, they ordered a taxi for me to get home. And you know what, Kiki? I've never wanted for anything since that day, since my mom told me that. The Lord is your shepherd. You will never be wanting again. So those two are the two. And finally, I'm going to say that my final person that is key in everything has got to be Peter Jones. He's invested in me. And I've always had two other great Black men in my life that I've said they're the greatest Black men of all time. And if I was going to have dinner, I would have Bob Marley on one side as my inspiration of music. And I would have Nelson Mandela on the next side, because I met him and I sang happy birthday to him when he came to Brixton. So I would have him on the other side. But in the middle, I would have a 6'7" tall white man. And that's Peter Jones, because he has become an absolutely fantastic ally of mine that he invested in, not in the sauce and not the product. He invested in Levi Roots, yes, which has allowed me to build this fantastic brand with him and I together. And it's been an absolutely amazing. This man, He's perhaps never talked to a Rastaman or anybody looking like me in his life. But for him to put his money on the line and to invest in me, and not just investment, because, you know, as I said, it is a partnership and it's a mentoring situation. So I would say that those three most important people in my life, my grandma, the original, my mom who said to me, the Lord is your shepherd, and of course, Peter Jones, who stepped up and invested in me.
That's just awesome. By the way, Psalm 23 is my favorite verse in the entire Bible. That's it. Always. Okay, so now what practical advice would you give to the Black Professional Network members to inspire them to dare to dream, to go after what they really want to achieve in their lives?
You know, and again, Black History Month, I've been advocating a new concept of mine. It hasn't gone down well with everyone, especially when you change. Nobody likes to change things or change conversations. We like to keep the same way. And I've been saying that we need to change ourselves and our attitude towards business and towards life. We need to look at the blueprint that we've been following all our lives as Black people, you know, in every way that we are as a person, and we need to change. We've kept that intact, and we've been very bossy, if I can use that word, to be who we are in that respect. But just like as I found out about my sources, if you really want to show love and to get love from everyone, then you have to open up yourself a bit more. And as I talked about my source, that I had to actually not make it as authentic as my grandma would have had it, you know, which was a very hot sauce back then, as Caribbean sauce was then. And I had to change this to be able to fit in the market for this to become a success. And it's the same thing about my own self. I've had to change who I am, able to be the Levi Roots that was fresh off the front line in Brixton, that was hustling and selling weed and all kind of stuff. Because growing up on the streets of Brixton back in those days, you had to be able to be resilient as well to survive. Because you wasn't getting the jobs, you wasn't getting an interview, and there was nobody like a Peter Jones that would have come through your area to be able to spot you. So I had to go through a whole metamorphosis of changing who I am and the way I spoke, the books that I read, the lyrics and how I wrote my songs in every which way, to be able to say that I want to reach out to much more than just the people who were listening to my music, which was predominantly roots and culture sort of songs. I now want my message to reach out to everyone that hears it or to buy my product. But in able to do that, they have to be able to tap into who you are. And so you have to be a little bit like them in some kind of way. You have to read the books that they've read. You've got to understand and you have to change your language as well too. And the way I speak now is not the way that Levi Roots spoke on the front line many years ago. And as I said, Peter Jones never taught me anything. I was always me, always capable of making that change. But it's being brave enough to admit to yourself that you perhaps need to change it. So to answer your question and to go directly to your answer, in these times, if we are to step up and to be better at communicating with everyone, especially as I said about Black History Month here, it should be about us passing on our heritage and our culture to white people. Black History Month shouldn't be about us learning about ourselves, because we should know that already. And I don't want to be watching 12 Years a Slave every October when it comes on these slavery movies every time. I don't want my son to be watching these things. I want him to be thinking about science and technology and advancement and learning about that going forward. But I do think it's important for us to educate our neighbors who don't know who we are. So we need to change a little bit in how we do things. And I think that change has been the savior of myself. And I do think if we adapt and we get used to change a little bit more, it will be easier for us to excel ourselves more in this Great Britain of ours.
Levi, I don't think you understand how much I love everything you've just said about, you know, educating and sort of reinventing yourself and understanding them, the other, and having them understand us. That's part of one of the key umbrellas of what BPN, how the BPN operates, because one of our key umbrellas is to connect people we connect people. So it's not about saying we're just Black and we're over here and we're all going to be over here. It's about connecting people. It's about sharing that story.
Absolutely.
Right?
And I just add one more thing here, because you can't connect if you are the only one that knows the other person. Because if you ask me about my white friends and about their history, I can tell you their history more than they know themselves. And all Black people can, because we learn about history in school, and it's something that we are really interested in as a person. So we can tell him about his heroes, his Winston Churchill and William Shakespeare and whoever it is that you can tell him about, the playwrights and the film, everything you can tell him about who is white. But if you was to ask that white person to tell you about something that makes you tick, to explain about one of my heroes, to tell me who, for instance, Marcus Garvey is, who's a Jamaican hero to myself, to explain Sojourner Truth, to explain these great Black heroes of the past and even current ones as well, not just of the past, but tell us of the inspirational Black people of the. I don't think any white people would be able to do that. And yet there are people that you're around every day. But I can speak lyrical about their heroes and what they did. So it's time now that this is even up a bit more. So we should try to educate. We need to educate these people about who we are. Because the greatest part of having a conversation about unity is when you know about each other. So we need to let them know who our heroes are and how we are ticked.
100%. I love that. I love that. Okay, now we're coming towards the end of this conversation. I want to ask you, what is your favorite quote, if you have one?
Yeah, I do have one.
Of course you do.
It's a mantra that I've built my life on. I learned it when I was in Her Majesty's pleasure. I was in prison. And that's where my change came around, because I had the time to be able to read the right books. And like I said, to metamorphose myself from just the Levi Roots that was singing roots and culture songs, that somebody could really articulate himself to other people as well. And it actually came from Shakespeare. And it's the Julius Caesar quote from Brutus. It's a very famous, Shakespeare quote. But I think it's the greatest entrepreneurial quote, because it is something for entrepreneurs. And it's the saying that Brutus was saying, that there's a tide in the affairs of man. Taking up the floods will lead to fortune. All the days of your lives could be deemed in shallows and in miseries. But on such a full sea are we now afloat, and we must take the current when it serves, or lose your ventures. And what Brutus was saying in that saying there, you have to take your chance when it comes. Are you going to lose any adventures that you may think that you're going to have? And I'll just wrap that up for you. When I was being told that don't take the guitar on the show, that was my tide, as Shakespeare is saying about the tide that comes, your chance, as dangerous as these things may be, because as I said, I could have been rejected with the guitar. If BBC could have said, sorry, Levi, this is not a music study program, get your business plan, which I didn't have one. I just had my guitar. So what Shakespeare is saying, that take the current when it serves, or lose your venture. So you've got to take your chance when you feel you're ready. So I've used that mantra, since I learned it many, many years ago, to take the current when it serves, never be afraid, as long as you know and you feel in yourself that you're ready, and be brave, be resilient. Because if you did fall down, like I says, it's all about feedback.
That's right. That's right. There's no failure. There's only feedback.
Failure at all. Yeah.
I love that. Okay. And now here comes to our last question. Because like I said, we love to have fun at the BPN. So as our theme this year is Dare to Dream. Now, if you could have any superhero power, what power would you choose and why?
I think I would perhaps say, that's a difficult one there. The most obvious one is, is hindsight. I think that's the one that I think most people would want, because you always say hindsight is a beautiful thing. If you can think of the answers before you ask the question, that would be a brilliant one there. But I don't know. I don't think I would ever need a superpower. I think I do. Actually, I do think I've already possessed superpower, and it's called Talawa.
What does that mean?
I think if there are any Jamaicans that are listening to your podcast now, they will know exactly what I mean.
Oh, please educate me. I want to learn.
Talawa. Talawa is the Jamaican saying that and all Jamaicans will grow up on it. They say we're little, but we're talawa. We're small, but we're big in chest and we're big in our heart and everything. Whereas we also say Jamaica is the biggest small island in the world because it's the only one that has its own music. It's in reggae music around the world. It has its own religion in Rastafari. Some of the greatest philosophies and singers even in America. Colin Powell is Jamaican. The current vice president is Jamaican. Jay-Z is Jamaican. So it's the Talawa that we're saying that allows us. Usain Bolt will be on the line and about to run the most amazing 100 meters in the lifetime of humankind. And yet everybody is like really concentrating on the line. But this Talawa man, this Jamaican, you know, he's doing his sign and he's kissing the girls and he's blowing his... It's inside of us that allows us to excel. That when Jamaica, it's like the film Cool Runnings. That when everyone watches Cool Runnings, no matter what film is on the other station, you'll watch it because it's that Jamaicanism that adds Jamaica. And I think it's not just about Jamaica that have that Talawa. It is as a people that has that allow, but Jamaicans have learned how to express the Talawa. So I would say if I have a superpower, is that one that we all have as a people, you know, as an African nation. Is the Talawa that inside of us that allows ourselves to excel at whatever we put our minds to.
I love that. I can relate to the Talawa. Maybe I don't use mine as often as I should, but I can relate to the Talawa.
Absolutely.
And thanks to you with your inspirational story and your journey and being who you are and showing up as Levi, maybe I will definitely be borrowing from you to use more of my Talawa. And I hope all of you watching this will be using more of your Talawa, having listened to Levi Roots today. Levi, I am very, very, very honored to have interviewed you today. And I've learned so much from you. And I thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Kiki. I really enjoyed it.
Right, guys. So this is it. We're wrapping up. Right. As you know, we are bringing you these conversations to inspire you. Go get your own Talawa, express your own Talawa, discover what it is, in the words of Levi, and then express it. So guys, that's it from me. We're asking you to join us in these conversations always. Follow us on Facebook, join our Facebook group, follow us on LinkedIn. And if you want to subscribe to our mailing list, go to our website, theblackprofessionalsnetwork.co.uk, and you can subscribe to our mailing list there. So Levi, thank you again for joining me for this conversation. I have learned so much from you, and I hope you guys did too. And that's it from me, signing out.